It is our pleasure to be joined by the host of Mac and Cube on WJOX in Birmingham. He also has a new college football podcast he's doing on Sundays, Cube Show. Cole Cubelic's in the house. What's going on, man?
What's up, fellas? Glad to be with you. Good to be hanging out.
How we doing, man? We've had a wild season. It's been a lot of fun watching this thing unfold. There's been a couple of weekends that been some of the best weekends of college football I can remember.
Especially here late. That's the best part is, What was it, 2 weeks ago when we thought it was going to be a really sleepy Saturday and it didn't look like there was going to be any upsets. There weren't a lot of ranked matchups, and then all hell broke loose and actually had a chance for hell and then some to break loose. And based on the way that morning slate went, didn't quite happen that way, but it's been awesome, man. It's been a cool season, seeing a team like TCU be able to get where they are, do what they've done. Michigan, I think a lot of people thought they were going to take a huge step back. For them to be right back in the mix again, it's been fun. Tennessee to be able to pop up and exceed expectations and get some huge wins against Alabama at home, end a massive losing streak against Florida, be able to win at LSU the way they did. It's been a lot of fun, man. It's been a cool season.
Now, before we preview what I think could end up being a really fun conference championship weekend, we got to talk about your alma mater, man, right? Because Auburn, you're an Auburn guy. You're kind of one of the spokesman of the program, although you're as critical of that program as anyone. Hugh Freeze, what do you think?
I think Hugh will win games, and I think Hugh has a chance to have real sustainability as the Auburn head football coach for a long time. He is aligned with a lot of the people that matter, and there were people that will debate that. I kind of stole that phrase from Brian Kelly. That's when I think we all realized how brilliant it was, just alignment and how we need that in college football with our programs. And there are people that tell you the fan base not aligned and that a portion of the fan base doesn't like it. It's true. I mean, I've had plenty of people call into McElroy and I show or tweet me and tell me they're done. They're not going to pay attention to Auburn football anymore, whatever it is. But on the flip side of that, I think when you talk about alignment, what really matters, and not that the fans don't, because they do, but you have to be aligned with the people at the top. And that's been a big problem for Auburn coaches in the past. And I think there could be more alignment with this hire and the people high in the administration and even above the administration that goes further than we've had in a long time. And when I say we right now, I speak as an Auburn alum and as an Auburn letterman. Some people get that mixed up when I speak as we as members of the media, but it's confusing. I get it. But I think Hugh Freeze is the guy that a lot of them wanted last time and they wanted this time. And so they got their guy. So my thing now is I thought it was great when Auburn went outside the box and made a completely different hire, got away from the good old boy network. I celebrated that. I thought it was great for Auburn University and the Auburn athletic department. Well, that blew up in our face and I was wrong about it. I'll admit that. So you know what? Lean into it. Lean into the guys that help, lean into the guys that matter. But by God, you make that NIL fund stacked and loaded every year. If you're going to get what you want and you're going to have it your way, and this is going to be the Burger King of athletic departments, you make sure the cash register is full. And if that happens, I think it's a pretty nice trade-off. Hugh Freeze has won games in the SEC, knows how to recruit. I'm anxious to see the staff because he oversold it a little bit yesterday, saying, the amount of big name coaches that want to come here. Well, you can't say that and then bring in a bunch of guys from Liberty. That can't happen. But I don't think it will happen. I think some of them will come as maybe analysts, different things of that nature. But if he puts a good staff together, I think he has a chance to attack the portal. There's going to be a lot of receivers, running backs, quarterbacks interested in playing in his offense. And I think if that takes place, you have a chance to flip it pretty quick. The problem is you play Nick Saban and Kirby Smart every year, and now you play a division that Sam Pittman has overachieved, that Lane Kiffin is doing great things in, that Mike Leach, who's a proven commodity, is doing well in, and that Brian Kelly just overachieved in year one. So not everyone in one division can continue to overachieve. That's literally impossible. So it's going to be tough going based on who you have to go against, but he has everything in place to go do it. The NIL fund is ready. He has a brand new football facility that he'll be the first head coach to step into that takes a backseat to no one. You have a passionate fan base, a great home field advantage. You can sell the SEC. Like I said, I think Hugh Freeze will win games. And there are people I understand that don't like it and don't think it's right, or morally they disagree with it. I'd be the last one to sit here and tell you guys that people don't deserve second chances, or things in your past should be held against you, because I wouldn't be where I am if that's the case. I mean, hell, I'm on chance probably 30 right now in my life. So, I understand that some people don't like him. That's your prerogative. There are things about him that are going to have to be different. I think the skin's going to have to be a little bit thicker, and he's going to have to have maybe a new set of armor when it comes to what people are saying about him or tweeting about him. And if that can be done, I think Hugh Freeze can win games, and I think he can be the Auburn head coach for a long time.
Yeah, it seems like, I guess, call it the new era of college football, kind of aligns with his strengths, right? Recruiting and being able to get some good players in there. And I think that's going to be critical. Quarterback, if he's got a quarterback, he's got a chance. What's that looking like? Do you think he's going transfer portal for that, or what's the options there?
Eddie, I think that's feasible, but I think with Robbie Ashford, I think you have a lot to work with talent-wise. And what's interesting about it is I see not exactly skill set, but just strengths, weaknesses, and how they balance out. There's a lot of where Malik Willis was, where Robbie Ashford is. Malik showed great escapability. He had a big, strong arm, but the intermediate stuff, the accuracy, not as consistent. He was super athletic, but he wasn't ready to be a college quarterback. Well, he goes to Liberty. He gets different coaching, a little bit of a different system. And guess what? Now, he's a guy that probably has a bright future in the NFL. So I think Hugh probably looks at Robbie Ashford and says, oh, we can work with that. There's a ton of ability that if we can sort of hone, something really small. First couple of games this year, Robbie Ashford would throw a traditional screen like he was Dwight Gooden trying to throw a fastball past Keith Hernandez in a spring training game. Like the last couple of games, he does the traditional, give ground, draw the rush, float it over the rush, like a screen should be thrown. So he's taken small steps, and you can see, okay, this is a set of skills that, if honed correctly, might allow him to be a successful college quarterback. And then Zach Calzada has said that he wants to stay and he wants to fight for that job. And he's a guy that doesn't have the same mobility, but obviously has a big, strong arm, can push the ball down the field. And you think about what Hugh did with guys like Bo Wallace and Chad Kelly that didn't really have elite mobility or speed, and utilize their ability to push the ball down the field. So I think he'll have a couple to choose from right there on his roster, but if there's one that he thinks can be better in the portal that he can get, I would imagine he would go there. I think it's more important that they attack offensive line and receiver in the portal, because that's where Auburn is really deficient. They do not have a number one go-to eraser, back shoulder in the red zone or back shoulder on 3rd and 5 that you feel pretty damn confident he's coming away with the ball, or the defender's probably going to have to interfere with him to keep him from getting that ball. So most things going to go your way. And they just don't have a lot of offensive linemen that would start at a lot of other schools in the SEC. That's the nicest way I know how to say it. So I think those two positions probably more critical than quarterback right now.
Interesting. Well, we'll certainly be keeping tabs on your Auburn Tigers moving forward, Cole. But let's dive into these games, man. And let's start on Friday night. Pac-12 championship game between Utah and USC. The first time these two teams played, got a fantastic, exciting game. I don't know if Utah can slow down Caleb Williams in the way that this team is playing currently offensively, but you think Utah can pull it off again? You think they can beat this team twice?
They can. I don't think they will. I think the recipe is to maintain possession. I think that offensive line plays good football. And I think with Tavion Thomas, you go and you say, okay, we're going to try to control this game. We're going to try to take the possessions under 10 and then hope for a mistake or two, which, let's be real, I think USC's turned it over 4 times this year. I mean, good God, think about that number. Like, how many games have we watched where one team turned it over 4 times this year?
Yeah, I think they have one fumble on the entire season.
One fumble lost, correct. I mean,
Aren't they like plus
22
24 or something like
plus
that?
22, I think,
22?
in the turnovers. It's completely insane what they're doing from a turnover perspective. Plus 22, 3 interceptions. They've lost 1 fumble on the year. Now, is some of that good fortune? Yeah, okay, but you don't go this far with that kind of a turnover margin and only having lost 1 fumble and thrown 3 picks. As much as they're putting it in the air, I mean, that's something that they've obviously focused on and that they understand how to maintain. But I think you got to get their possessions under 10. You hope for a couple of punts and a mistake or two, and then you're like, okay, our defense has 2 chances to go win this game. And how does it play out at that point? Put yourself in the game in the 4th quarter. Hope you have the ball and you can go 4-minute offense and get out of there and steal one. But I think you're right. USC just has so many dynamic playmakers in so many places. And obviously losing Travis Dye was big. But the thing that has surprised me more than anything else is what Coach Henson's done with that offensive line. That group looks totally different than a year ago. And I know there were people that watched them last year and said, oh, this group's great. And this group's going to be one of the best in the league. I still don't think they understand comparatively last year to this year how different that group really is. So that's where they separate themselves from what I thought they would be and a lot of other people thought they would be. I just think Caleb's playing at too high of a level. They're taking care of the football. They're taking the football away. But if Utah is going to do it, I think they have to maintain possession, limit the amount of times that Caleb Williams touches the football, hope for a mistake or two, hope for a punt or two, and then all of a sudden you're down to like a 2-possession game each way. And then you try to go out and win the game that way. I think that's the path. It's not a very easy one. And I don't see many other paths in which Utah can win that game. But just imagine where that confidence level is for USC right now. Because Oregon State game was kind of iffy. You mentioned the earlier Utah game. Okay, we were like, yeah, good, but nah, not great. The confidence got to be through the roof right now. And that makes a big difference in games like this.
Caleb Williams, is there any way he doesn't win the Heisman Trophy at this point? If not him, who else would it be?
Yeah, I don't see it, Teddy. I don't know who else that guy would be. I think there's some other guys like Blake Corum deserves to be there. I think you can make an argument for Hendon Hooker, even with the injury, maybe deserving to be in New York. CJ Stroud's had a hell of a year.
Duggan, TCU?
Yeah, Max Duggan's had an awesome year. And probably I would have no problem with him being in New York, but I mean, I think it's Caleb Williams' trophy. And I'd be really surprised if anybody else took it home.
I'm with you. All right, let's move on to the Big 12 championship game, which I think has the chance to be the best game of the entire weekend. TCU, Kansas State, just been a magical season for the Horned Frogs. But Cole, coming into this game, Kansas State with Will Howard at quarterback, they're playing some really good football. How do you see this one going, man?
Almost a little bit similar to what we described with that last game. And I think when you get to these settings, you take your strength, you take what's a mismatch, and you have to apply it and say, this is our best way to go win this game. And for me, Kansas State, that's physicality. And I think you go in this game and you try to prove that you're the more physical football team. You try to control it that way. Now, that doesn't mean that play action is not going to open up and the RPO game is not going to open up and you're not going to hit things down the field. But I think if Kansas State is going to beat TCU, they got to punch them in the face, and they got to do it multiple times in this game. Because if you get any sort of a shootout, we just mentioned Max and what he's done. I mean, TCU is an explosive play waiting to happen. And that's not just through the air. A lot of times when we say that, like that's one of the misnomers with Tennessee this year. It's like, oh, well, they hit all these deep balls. Yeah, Jalen Hyatt's caught a lot of deep passes, but go look at the 40, 50, 60, and 80-yard touchdown runs their running backs have. And I think TCU is kind of the same way. What they do through the air and the quarterback run opens up so many other things that they're able to generate explosive plays in a lot of different ways. So Kansas State, I think, has to be more physical, and you have got to limit explosive plays. Now, I'm talking like next to none. It's one of the really good, like I take a perfect example of a game like that. Look at LSU and A&M last week. So the things that LSU is doing well this year, they spread the field, they make high percentage throws, but their receivers are so talented, the catch and run often turns into explosive plays. Same thing with quarterback run. Like Jaden Daniels has given them back-breaking runs early in games almost every week. A&M didn't allow it. So very similar plan there for Kansas State. Tackle well, be more physical, don't give up plays over the top defensively at the third level. And I think you're in that game because, like you said, they've gotten good quarterback play. They have just enough balance offensively. And I think the real mismatch is their physicality. So if they can utilize that portion of their game and sort of make the game go the way that they want to, that Kleiman, I think, probably wants to, being around him a little bit, knowing what his mentality is, I think that's the path for Kansas State to win that game. And I think you're right, Gabe. There are not a lot of people talking as much about that game as it being a classic this weekend. I think it has a chance to be.
As much as we've seen K-State over the years, we know that if it's going to be a close game, if they can force a stalemate offensively and defensively, they're going to win the game at special teams. They're going to create a kick return for a touchdown, punt return for a touchdown. That's just how they do it. What I think is interesting is how much better their offense has been with Will Howard at quarterback. And it's been a shock because this dude was horrendous as a backup over the last two years. And he came in and I said, oh, it's over for Kansas State. Wrong. He's looked amazing. He's made some really good throws. He's big. He's athletic. I mean, they can get in some of those heavy sets and run quarterback, power and stuff like that with him. He's been a game changer.
Well, the other part about that, Teddy, that I think is even crazy is I think a lot of us sort of said that when Adrian transferred in, we were kind of like, I mean, okay, serviceable, but this isn't going to be great. And then it was great with him. And then he goes out and your theory kind of steps in and you're just like, we've seen a little bit of this and it can't be better. And then it was better. So that's one of the things about, this is a little off topic, but that's one of the cool things about college football. And it's one of the things that really pisses me off about the rankings this week is I think there are a lot of people that look at Tennessee and they say, well, we're going to put Alabama ahead of you because Hendon Hooker's not there. And it's like, well, hold on. The team accomplished this. The team got here. Hendon Hooker didn't get there. Did he have a lot to do with it? Absolutely. He's awesome. He's had a great year. He's an amazing kid. He's a great story. But I had that game last week, and on the first drive of the game, Joe Milton goes bombs away, and all of a sudden Tennessee's up, and they go up and win by 60-some points. I mean, how many examples do we need of whether it's Ohio State having to put a backup quarterback in the playoffs and making a run and going and winning, or different quarterbacks that have stepped in over the years and either been better than the starter or had more success? And so sometimes I think we look at certain individuals, and even though they're great, we just think there's no chance for somebody else to be good. And that's the great thing about this sport is because of the age, because of the level of experience, guys can be different in a hurry. Guys, you get 2 or 3 games under your belt, or hell, 2 or 3 practice reps as the one, you could be totally different. Like, Teddy, it as a linebacker, like, you probably didn't see shit the same way when you were getting 3rd string or 2nd string reps. And then all of a sudden you're the starter, you get all those reps, and you're like, boom, boom, boom. All right. Gabe and I get in there, and it's like, we don't know the difference between an odd and an even defense, watching it on film. And then we can see it on film, we line up, and we're like, I have no idea what this is. But then we do it for 2 weeks as the number one, and it's like, odd, stack, even, bear. We know it because we've seen it. Guys can change in a hurry, man. That's the cool thing about college football. And it's a cool thing about what Coach Kleiman's done there at Kansas State, too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm with you. Okay, SEC championship game. LSU have any chance to make this interesting against Georgia?
I think they do. First off, I'll say this about Georgia. There are a lot of people that are kind of down on Georgia because it just hasn't been as dominant the last few weeks. I look at that a very different way. If you go to the Kentucky game and some of the Georgia Tech game, I don't think it was really a lackluster performance as much as it was and you guys will understand this, a very low-risk game plan, if you will, where we don't need to take a bunch of shots down the field. We don't need to run all these plays that consist of some sort of a read or a mesh or an option play. Like, they're kind of just running plays a lot of the time. And defensively, they don't have to be overly aggressive and commit 8 or 9 guys to the box or have, all these, 90s Steelers pressure packages where people have no idea who's dropping and coming. It's just kind of, hey, we think we're better than you. We're going to go run our defense. We're going to run our offense, and we're going to win a game. We're going to get out of here and be undefeated. That's what I've seen the last couple of weeks, for the most part, not all of it. So I do think there's a chance that maybe they twist that knob a little bit and look like a little bit of a different team. But there are also some things that LSU does that I think can be complicated. You heard me mention a few of them before. They can spread you out. And I don't know if a lot of people hadn't watched a lot of LSU this year, but that's basically what they are. I mean, they can go 4 and 5 wide receiver sets. Jaden is, and it's the cool part about LSU is I don't really view them as they got X amount better this year. I just think the coaches just kind of mixed and matched a little bit. They more figured out what they're good at than they did just get a lot better. Because early on, I think they tried to be something that they're not. Then they realized, okay, our quarterback goes faster under tempo. They did a couple of studies where plays that the play clock was 19 and higher, he was like 85% as opposed to like 60% under that. It's like, all right, let's go tempo. He's better than that. He doesn't need a full field progression. Let's give him half field reads. Or, you know what? We've seen that he's such a good runner. Let's give him 1-2, boom, take off and go. And by the way, let's design a few more quarterback runs for him because he's shown the durability and he can be dynamic. So I think they can go wide. They can empty the box. And if you don't want to, he'll take the RPOs or the quick throws. And they have the talent at receiver to turn those into explosive plays. So you got to tackle well. But you also have to defend an extra gap because now you have quarterback run. Also early on, very young offensive line. 2 freshman tackles playing at the same time for a long time. And a freshman tight end who, let's be real, kind of like what we talked about, taking some time to figure things out. I don't know about you guys. I hadn't seen many freshman tight ends that get in there and knock people around. Like, yeah, you can catch balls, but handling edge defenders in the SEC, there's not many that are very good at that. Well, Taylor's gotten better at it across the year, and now he's kind of used to it. So they do have a little bit more of a north-south run threat that they can rely on. Defensively, I think they can physically match up at the point of attack. They got a couple of guys that play. Jacqueline Roy's played really good football. Watch 99 and 92 inside. I think 92 is one of the more underrated players in the SEC. And then off the edge, Ali Gabe, BJ Olajari, they can play the run. They can get to the quarterback. And now you mix in this Troy Polamalu like Harold Perkins, who can play off the ball and read. He can line up on, he's a freshman. He's got legit pass rush moves off the edge. Like he understands how to dip and rip. He understands how to use his hands. He can turn speed to power. Like he is a legitimate pass rusher right now. You can use him all over the place. They'll line him up at a 0 nose and kind of play bear, and they can bring him, they can drop him, do different things. So I think defensively, the other thing I like about him is their safeties fly to the box and are not afraid to tackle. And if Georgia wants to go ground and pound, that will be extra support that LSU can add on a regular basis. So if Georgia does all the things that A&M did, their defensive line disrupts and their offensive line sort of handles the LSU defensive line, they tackle well on the perimeter, they don't give up those back-breaking runs from the quarterback, Georgia will be fine. But if LSU starts doing some of those things that they've been good at all year, then Georgia has to make some decisions. Do we stack the box, play the run, play quarterback run? Do we spy him? Do we put extra guys out on the perimeter to try to take away the catch and run? So it's going to be an interesting cat and mouse game if LSU has success early. But the other part of that is I do think there's a chance that Georgia kind of says, okay, we've been playing on 7.5. We're going to go to 9. And if they get there, then it could be a totally different game.
Just quick, before we move on, how's this Georgia team compare to last year's?
I don't really think they do, Teddy. Especially on defense, they don't have the same kind of guys at as many spots. Like, I mean, Carter's amazing, and he'll be an early round draft pick. I think the linebackers are coming on a little bit. That's where I think they're most different is last year they had big-time erasers at the second level. And I think what the guys inside did was make you say, we're not even going to mess with that. So we're going to try to get you out here. And those second level defenders were so good that they were arriving to the spot before the ball did. Like they were playing plays before plays developed. you know exactly what that means. And so they just made life so difficult being so good at all three levels. And to be honest with you, the third level didn't really matter that much for them last year. But I don't know if they're all of that just yet. Athletically, I think they're pretty close. It's just an experience level, the ability to read and recognize as early, and they're just not quite as dominant across the board up front. Like, you didn't move Jordan Davis last year. You just didn't. And then no one talked about Devonta Wyatt, who was right there next to him. You didn't move him. So now you got these edge defenders that are doing whatever the hell they want, and the linebackers that are going wherever they want because no one could get to them. And so it's not to that level, but I do think the offense is a little bit better. I think the offense can be more explosive at times. If the receivers are healthy, they can get a little bit more downfield. Brock Bowers is he's a mismatch no matter where he is. I liked how they tried to force feed him the football last week against Georgia Tech early. They've gotten away from that at times, but not even Harold Perkins. Like, LSU doesn't have a matchup for him. And if they can find ways to get him the football quickly, then he could be a guy that completely takes over a game.
Yep. I hear you. All right, Big Ten championship game. Michigan coming into this matchup with Purdue with all the momentum in the world. Like, do you think this thing, Aiden O'Connell, you think he can keep this thing competitive if they can produce offensively? I just can't imagine Michigan not rolling in this game.
No, I'm with you. I do think that Aiden O'Connell and Charlie Jones will probably grab a little bit. Ohio State put a few things on film through the air that they may be able to replicate to an extent. But the problem is Michigan plays bully ball as well as anybody in college football. And I just don't think Purdue's going to be able to match up to that. None of us, we all thought Jim Harbaugh was off of his rocker. It was either in fall camp or beginning of the season when he said, I think this defense might be better than last year. We're like, bro, stop. Like, that sounds cool, but no way. It might be better than last year. I mean, and I think it's because they're not as reliant on one or two guys. Like, collectively, I think they're more dominant across the board up front. And then they had the juice at receiver last year. They didn't really get to it as much. Well, now they're getting to it a little bit more. They're a little bit more capable at the quarterback position this year. And so they're that much more difficult to defend up front. It's going to be hard for them to not keep that Joe Moore Award in-house because they had it last year. And it's going to be very difficult for us to go get that trophy and ship it somewhere else. But that's where they become super difficult, man, is at the line of scrimmage. And if you can't match up, it's going to be a big problem. And you saw what happened when Ohio State overcommitted to try to say, yeah, we're not going to let you do that. Okay, cool. We can throw it past your guys. And that's where I think offensively Purdue will get a little bit, but I don't see defensively them being able to manage what Michigan's going to be able to hit them with.
Yeah. If Blake Corum gets healthy and, just kind of considering the field this year, it seems like they may have a really good shot at winning the whole thing. I mean, yeah,
I think the only, I don't even know if it'll be a really bad matchup, but the only matchup that they probably wouldn't really want to see would be Georgia, because physically Georgia can match up and is a little bit more dominant in certain areas. Like, I mean, guys, Georgia, Brock Bowers is not like the true tight end at Georgia. I mean, they've got Darnell Washington, who's 6'7", 285, playing tight end. He's jumping over people and catching footballs. Well, then Bowers can be your move tight end. Kenny McIntosh is bullying people over out of the backfield. He's a big physical back. The offensive line, the guards and tackles are all monsters. Like, you guys, when you see the tackles for Georgia, it's impossible not to look at them and say, well, God created an offensive tackle when he made that guy. Like, hands going past the kneecaps and like rear ends that stick out with and they actually don't have bellies hanging over their belt. Like, it's stupid to see. So physically, and then we mentioned what they have defensively. Like, they can attack with speed off the edge. They've got power. They can move outside, inside. So that would be the matchup that would be the most intriguing. But you think about Michigan against a TCU or a Michigan against a USC. Like, I think Michigan could probably keep USC under 8 possessions in a game because I don't think USC could stop them. So, they are a more well-rounded team than last year. Last year, they had the brute force. This year, I think collectively they're a little better on defense, and I think they're a little more explosive offensively. They can play through the air a little bit better this year than last year. They were limited last year with what they could do through the air. This year they're different, and it's going to make for some fun matchups in the playoff, no doubt.
As far as the ACC championship game, is Drake May the only reason we watch this thing? Is that it?
Well, I mean, there are other players that are going to be fun to watch. Like Trenton Simpson at Clemson is one of the best linebackers in college football, super explosive. Obviously, Will Shipley is overly dynamic. Maybe this gives us an idea of what the quarterback picture is going to look like down the road at Clemson. Dabo says he's sticking with DJ, but I don't know, guys. The last couple games, nothing has looked comfortable. It just does not look comfortable. There doesn't look like there's a lot of confidence. We know there's multiple guys on that defensive line that are going to play in the NFL. That could be fun to watch. But Drake May, like you said, he is that guy. And I mean, there are people saying that he might be the first quarterback taken if he could come out this year. So if you want to get a look of the quarterback that we're going to be talking about for the next 2 years, watch the ACC championship game, because Drake May is going to be that dude.
Say DJU stays at Clemson. I've heard some people say that they felt like he was going to hit the portal, maybe get it's not like it's anything against Clemson, that just maybe he needs a change of scenery.
I felt like that was very possible last year, Teddy. And so, I mean, hell, there's a handful of kids that I would tell you across the entire country that I would say, no way, they'll never hit the portal. Because I think if I would have told you guys 365 days ago, hey, that receiver from Pitt is going to go to the portal, you'd have told me I was crazy. Like, the dude just shattered every record. He just won the Biletnikoff. Like, what are you talking about? There he goes. So it's like, if I would have told you that a kid playing quarterback that had beaten his rival was wearing the same number at the same school with the same name on the back of his jersey as his dad, and was most likely going to be the starter next year, that he was going to hit the portal and go to Oregon, you would have said, you're crazy. Here we are. Yep. So I don't, it's hard for me to look at any kid and say he would definitively never go to the portal.
I'm with you. All right, one more, and we'll let you get out of here, man. Do you think the college football playoff is already set no matter what happens this weekend?
No, I don't. The interesting discussion is whether or not TCU is in no matter what. And if this were 4 weeks ago, I would have looked at that schedule and said, abso-freaking-lutely, look what they've done. But not every team on that schedule has ramped it up towards the end of the year. And I think that might work against them. You know, I had TCU in the top 4 of every one of my that we did for ESPN for the games that I do. Like, they've been in my top 4 every week because of what they did from a schedule perspective. But there are certain things that this committee has said that would make me nervous if I were TCU. And it frustrated me the first 2 weeks because it was, well, teams, look how fast this team scores. Look how many points this team scores. Look at the rate this team scores. It's almost like this committee has forgotten that there are 2 other facets of football. And that's defense and special teams. And I, for one, it bothers me when people say, well, a team had to come from behind to win. I actually respect the hell out of it when a team comes from behind to win. I actually respect the hell out of a team that faces adversity and finds a way to get it done, especially when it's not the same way each and every week. Because we all know, if you're a one-trick pony, you're going to get got at some point. Someone's going to get you. It might be in the regular season, conference title game, playoff. You're going to get got. And so I think we thought TCU was just Max Duggan for a little while. Oh, whoa, that tailback's pretty good. Oh, their offensive line's playing good ball. Oh, they can get some stops when they need to. Okay. They can come from behind. Cool. They can jump out to a big lead. Cool. So because of how the committee seems to be obsessed with offense, and because they outwardly discussed some frustration with how they were winning games at one point in time, that would scare me a little bit if I were TCU. I could see them losing and still getting in. But I think where Ohio State is, and more importantly, the way this committee has talked about it, I don't think Ohio State's one of the best 4 teams in the country, no matter what happens this weekend. I just don't believe that. I haven't been in love with them all year. And I question why people had them as a number 1, 2, 3 team in the nation going in based on what was gone. And that defense had not been what it had been for the last 3 or 4 years. So I would be worried about that. And I would be worried about what the committee had, how they have complimented Ohio State this year. Because I could see a scenario where Ohio State gets in if they were to go down, and maybe it wasn't a very comfortable loss.
I hear you. It'll be interesting. That'll be.
It's a great question. If USC and TCU lose, who deserves to be in? You know, just if TCU loses, what's it going to look like? Because
it gets hairy really quick if USC and TCU lose. And I think those are the 2 most likely losses over the weekend. I mean, it's a weird picture after that.
Very, very weird because, you know, the one thing that I don't, first off, the one thing right now in the rankings that I can't be okay with is Alabama over Tennessee. I just, and I understand Tennessee lost at South Carolina. It actually looks better now. It's an 8-win team that just beat the number 9 team on the road, by the way. And they lost on the road. Alabama close losses, sure. They also have close wins that for some reason nobody wants to talk about Texas or Texas A&M or Ole Miss had 4 plays inside the 20 to beat that team. And they couldn't do it. So we saw that game. It happened. Like my eyes witnessed it. I've watched the film like 5 times. I watched most of it live. It took place. If you're telling me that 2 teams with identical records and very similar strength of schedule, strength of record, whatever freaking metric you want to throw into it, but they played, like they traded paint, and the one that won is not ahead, I do not know what to do with you. And my brain will never compute that. There's not a day left in my life that my brain will be able to compute. 2 teams played, one of them won, the other is ranked ahead of them. I mean, this is literally like Mike Tyson and Buster Douglas and us watching it and somebody saying, Mike Tyson won that fight, man. Did you see the combinations early in that fight? Did you see the defense that he showed early? I'm like, bro, he knocked his ass out. I saw it. I witnessed it. No.
Yeah, but Buster had to come from behind.
There you go. He was overweight. He didn't look good when they fought. So,
yeah.
All I know is he knocked his ass out. And just like Tennessee knocked Alabama out. So then you also tell me last night that definitively Ohio State and Alabama's spots are not, they're not clear or they're not safe, whatever the verbiage was. Basically that those can be moved or exchanged. How can 2 teams that don't play switch positions? It's inexplicable. And I'm not somebody who gets mad at the committee all the time because I realize this is not all ever going to even out. There are too many variables. It's too different in too many ways. Schedules, teams, strength of schedules, venues, whether you injuries, body clock, game control, whatever the hell metric we want to talk about and focus on this year. Wins and losses head to head over. It's like when I always tweet out overall opponent record and everybody gets so mad. I'm like, guys, it's factual information. The teams that this team played won this many games, lost this many games. And I'm not saying it's the end all be all, but folks, that is what it is. The teams did this and didn't do that. That's all. And we can look at it a lot of other ways too. And that's great. That's cool. We should. But by God, when one team has the same record and a similar resume and they beat them, I can't go for that.
I'm with you, man.
Just like Hall and Oates. Can't go for that.
What a great reference. I'm with you. Well, Captain Croatia, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Got tomorrow. We're going. We're ready.
You look prepared, man. You look like you're about to be in soccer hooligan mode. I love it.
The reality
I
is
could see him like running down a street somewhere, beating the hell out of a rival with a pack of other guys wearing that jersey for sure.
Well, the good news there, Teddy, is that I don't think there's any Belgium fans running around Birmingham, Alabama. So we're going to be safe. We're going to be good.
All right, man. Hey, you're the best. One of the hardest working people in sports media that I know, man. Keep it up.
Absolutely. Enjoy being with you guys. Thanks for having me.